And I'm going to keep an eye on the participant list just so I can make sure I can let people in.
And
Um,
all cats are welcome,
oh, yeah.
including.
Yeah, we're going to have 3 of them today, probably, at some various times. Bye-bye. Okay.
So, Sean, I will take your lead. Do you want me to get started right on time? Do you want me to give it a couple minutes?
Let's give it a couple minutes, and then I'll do
Sure.
some introductory parts.
No problem.
Um, Actually, I'll go ahead and start the introductory part. Welcome back to Bard with the Bone. We're glad you can join us online. Um, Today, we're going to be doing original pronunciation. We're going to be led by Jess Behar Rakowski, who is the current interim artistic director of Baltimore Shakespeare Factory, and she is also the OP coach for the upcoming King Lear. In fact, I believe my first original pronunciation production that I ever saw at BSF, or Baltimore Shakespeare Factory, Jess was the OP coach for that as well. I believe. Maybe I'm wrong.
What show is it?
That was Othello.
Oh,
So
I'm going to go through our history of OP. So
okay, that'll be
I was
awesome.
actually not, but I will,
Okay, that'll you'll
you'll
be able to
find
help.
all about it.
Okay. So I'll let her get started since we get about an hour, and I think she's gonna roll on through. So just sit back this time, and we'll do some question and answer afterwards.
Yeah, and I'm gonna take you guys through a bunch of different things. Sean, thank you for that introduction. My name is Jess. I'm one of the founding members of Baltimore Shakespeare Factory, along with Tom DeLeese, and I am currently the interim artistic director. And yes, I was doing the original pronunciation coaching for our production of King Lear that was supposed to take place in 2020 and that will now take place in 2021. Um, and I am certified in original pronunciation by Paul Meyer Dialect Services. Um, so I wanted to just kind of set some norms. Like I said, in my day job, I'm a teacher professional developer. So I work with students and teachers. And so you're going to see that come out. It just can't help but come out. So I want this to feel really free. So feel free to ask questions. You can throw them in the chat or you can unmute. Actually, I'm not as comfortable with the Zoom platform as I am with some other platforms. So it looks like while I'm sharing, I have trouble seeing the chat. So if you actually just want to unmute and ask your question, that is perfect. I don't mind. We're a small group. Um, Please make sure you show respect to the presenter and participants. Um, we're all coming from a place of learning, and that's really what OP is about. I mean, that's why we do it as a company. Um, and we're going to be doing some live exercises. So you can try them unmuted if you want some feedback, or if you want to do them muted and just kind of play along, but you're a little shy, that's okay too. When I teach phonics to kids, I always tell them that they can leave their mic unmuted at certain times, and I often can tell how they're doing by the way their mouths move. And the same is true for OP. And please stay curious. So let's talk about what original pronunciation is. So, original pronunciation is the accent that most closely resembles the way people were speaking at the time. And when we talk about the time, we're talking about the time of Shakespeare and the time of his actors. So, this study is really based on the work of Dr. David Crystal, and I have his a link to his website here. He is a linguist, um, and he's done a lot of work on kind of the history of the English language, and um, he's written a lot of articles. And one kind of section of his work is this study of what did that accent sound like. And there's if you're interested, please head to his website, read more. It's really fascinating stuff. He was hired by the Globe Theatre in 2005 to dialect coach production of Romeo and Juliet. And they did this production, they did the full run in regular received pronunciation, which is the dialect that is used on stage in the UK, most often with Shakespeare. And then one weekend they did using this original pronunciation dialect. Um, the work has really continued. David Crystal's son, Ben Crystal, is an actor and producer, and he's worked with his dad, David Crystal, and they've really kind of looked at this from the linguist end and also the actor end. And so the kind of academic brain and kind of the embodied actor brain, and how do those come together? And his website is amazing too, if you want to check that out. The other kind of academic or person I feel like I need to recognize in all of this is Paul Meyer, who's a pretty famous dialectician and dialect coach. Um, I was very intimidated to meet him for the first time, along with some other dialect coaches like David Stern, who's on our advisory board, because I can see there might be something in the chat. Oh, yeah, Sean threw it up. Yes, you can also check out originalpronunciation.com. That's true, Sean. They've got stuff in there. Oh, look, I can see things. Um, Paul Meyer is the person who I received my OP certification under, and has also done work with our company. And he's done dialect coaching for a lot of original pronunciation productions here in the States. So let's talk about like BFSF's history with OP. How did we get into all of this? And I want you to know that we are currently the world leader in productions using the original pronunciation accent. So we received a grant in 2015 to do a production of The Merchant of Venice, and we actors in that production uh, listened to a recording of the production in original pronunciation by Dr. David Crystal. So that was really the first step, as actors listened to the way that whole show sounded. He did a full read of the play in OP. Then Ben Crystal actually came to Baltimore to our little theater in Hamden and worked with actors and did dialect coaching and some embodied coaching around the OP. The following year, we wanted to continue this, and we did The Winter's Tale, which is the first OP production that I was a part of. We did something similar. So David Crystal created a recording for us of the play in OP, and we used that to help us learn our lines and learn the accent. We also had actors in The Winter's Tale who were a part of the 2015 Merchant of Venice, who also kind of incorporated some of the things that they learned with Ben with us in Winter's Tale, although Ben did not come down. After that production, David Crystal said to Tom, Tom, if you're going to keep doing this work, you guys really should start taking ownership of it. And instead of having me do recordings every time you want to do a play. And so he put Tom in touch with Paul Meyer, who said, I can do some coaching for your actors and then kind of give them a test and certify them. And then you guys can really take the lead in doing that work. And after we had a meeting with him, me and some of the other actors, and he was like, do this in OP. We did some OP coaching. He was like, you know what? You guys don't really need classes. You guys are pretty good. So we took the test and we were certified. And that test was not easy. I'm going to tell you that right now. That kept me up at night. So the following year, we did Antony and Cleopatra, and Valerie Dowdle, who was one of our actors who was in Merchant and Winter's Tale and was certified by Paul Meyer. She actually did a recording, just like David had done for us, but she did the recording. And we worked off that, just like we had in the most recent two plays. For but we were still dealing with issues around consistency. And so in 2018, when we did Othello, we kind of pivoted. And instead of giving actors a recording, we instead started using a dialect coach. And Anne Turiano, who is one of our who was one of the actors certified in original pronunciation, she came aboard as the dialect coach for Othello. Um, and that process, and she really grounded that in the work that we had done with Paul Meyer. And that's really changed how we've started to do OP as a company, and how we train our actors and how we go about performances, because it allows us to make some really clear choices and have a really clean, consistent production. Um, in 2019, we used the same method with doing Hamlet with Anne. And then in 2020, um, I was slotted to do King Lear, and that's being rescheduled to 2021. And I use a very similar method to the method that Anne used. And I also use a little bit of physical work, um, and then along with some of my own acting tricks. So this is kind of where we've been. Can anybody share? Have you seen one of our OP productions?
Go ahead and raise your hands if you have.
So Alex,
Either,
Sean.
yeah. I think we're
Cool.
all fans.
Good. So I was in Winter's Tale, Antony and Cleopatra, Othello, Had a Baby, Lear. Yeah, so, oh, hold on. There's a few on the chat. Do we still have the David Crystal recordings? Somewhere. And actually, as I was, oh, so cool. Oh, you got Ben's autograph. Ben's hotter. Um,
I
but they're both very cool.
I wanted to add something. The Merchant of Venice, the fact that it was written up in the Sun paper, there was a headline that said Merchant of Venice in original pronunciation. That headline is the reason you got your stage,
Aw.
because Lewis Shaw and I years ago tried to get Baltimore Shakespeare Festival interested in doing some OP, and we did a couple of staged readings in really rudimentary OP, but we really thought it was a great thing, and the festival was like, they weren't really enthused with it. But when you guys showed up doing this stuff, that's when I decided I would do something, semi spectacular for your company.
Yay.
Well, we appreciate you, Tom, and I'm glad that it brought you to us. What's interesting, Tom, is what I was going to say is as I was poking around trying to get URLs for everything, I noticed that David has the recordings he's done for us on his website for sale. So I guess he's continuing to make money off them, which is good for him. He's a pretty amazing guy. He deserves it. Um, where's my... Okay, so I'm going to do a little OP for you later, and I'll have some other people do some if they'd like. But I wanted to kind of start us off with kind of like the experts in this, because, you know, one of the things that any actor will tell you is that, unless you've been really working something for quite a while, it's hard to get something that's perfect. And you also frequently need another ear to hear the things that you're not hearing. But I wanted you to hear an expert. So this is this is Ben Crystal. He is the one who came and did coaching with our production of Merchant of Venice. So he's the son. Um, and I want you to listen to some OP by Ben and David. And as you listen, I want you to tell me what you notice about it. Does it sound like any other accents that you've heard before? How does it sound different than the way we normally speak? Can you guys see my screen?
Mhm.
That it looks like a website and not a PowerPoint?
It's currently looking like a PowerPoint presentation, and make sure you have original sound turned on.
Okay, turn on original sound. do that right now. Okay, and then I'm going to share again. Okay.
There
So
we go.
this is right on originalpronunciation.com. So you can access these, and there's also a million of these on YouTube. But what I like about these is that there's no visual distractions to get in the way. You're just listening. Okay. So here's the opening speech of Richard III by Ben, the guy that you saw.
I believe what we need is to unshare it and share it again. And there is an itsy bitsy checkbox in the bottom left that says share sound. And when you share, that big pop-up has an itsy bitsy checkbox.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thanks.
On a rouse in the deep bosom of the ocean, buried. No our brows bound with victorious wraiths, our bruised arms hung up for monuments, our stern alarms changed to merry matins, our dreadful marches to delightful measures. Grim-visaged war hath smoothed his wrinkled front, and now, instead of mountain barbed steeds to fright the souls of fearful adversaries, a capers nimbly in a lady's chamber, to the lascivious pleasing of a love. But I, that am not shaped for sportive tricks, nor made to court an amorous looking glass, I that am rudely stamped, and want love's majesty to strut before a wanton ambling nymph, I that am curtailed of this fair proportion, chated a fete by dissembling nature, deformed, unfinished, sent before my time into this breathing world, scarce half made up, and that so lamely and unfashionable, that dogs bark at me as I out by them. Why I, in this wake paping time apace, have no delight to pass away the time, unless to spy my shadow in the sun, and descant on mine own deformity.
What'd you notice? What'd you hear?
Just before this class, I was watching a TV series set in Scotland, and I'm familiar with OP, but I've never had the resemblance quite so back to back. And so for me, that came out extra just because I was primed for it.
I'm familiar enough with OP to know what I make my own voice and mouth do for certain things, and I've heard him describe some other things, but the doggy R sound really shone through when he did it. I'm not looking and I'm just listening, and the I very pronounced when he's doing it. I have my own thoughts. I have my own thoughts about how your favorite accent will be what you overlay on OP, but that's for later.
And that's really interesting, Sean, because when I started this work, I was doing it. One of the things we're going to talk about are the variations in the accent. And when I started doing this work, I started with David and Ben, right? So I was going off of what I learned from them. When I started working with Paul, his feedback to me was, your I is too pronounced and your R is too doggy. And I was like, oh, but I wonder if that has to do with so that's interesting that you said that.
I mean, you still keep your own. It's funny with original pronunciation how you keep your own accent while adjusting to original pronunciation.
Well, your original accent is still going to be there in the stuff that isn't different. The vowel sounds and all that are not altered by the OP. They're just going to be yours. And one
Right,
thing
Tom.
I wanted to say about Ben and David, I listened to a whole lot of OP online, and some of it pretty bad. And I've heard it done well. But the one thing that Ben and David do is that it's too easy because it's foreign. People really emphasize the vowel sounds from OP, And the people at the time, that would have just been the way they spoke. And David and Ben, it sounds more like just somebody speaking than consciously doing OP.
Yes. So a couple things Tom said are really important. So when we get into some of the sounds, you're going to notice that what he said is that some of the sounds, and I believe Tom is certified in OP by Paul too, is correct? Yes. So some of the sounds for us as Americans don't change because the way Americans pronounce that vowel sound is the way that OP pronounces it. However, when you're working with actors who have different dialects, so for example, we have an amazing actor who works with us named Joe, and he has an English accent. Those are different sounds for him. And so he has to adjust his natural accent to fit into the OP because it's more of an American sound, which is interesting. Okay, here comes David doing the Lord's Prayer. See if you notice anything else.
The Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 6. After this manner, therefore, pray. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
Did you notice anything else?
The diphthongs are really smushed together, or instead of our.
Or, yeah.
He's very relaxed.
Yeah.
At its comfort. It's like listening to Tolkien.
Yeah, some of my feedback to actors in Lear a lot was it's not so precious. You know, when you're learning an accent, there's a part of you that wants to make every sound exactly right. But one of the qualities of OP are the elisions and the speeds and the naturalness of it. And so if you work really hard to make everything really precious, it doesn't sound like OP. So that is definitely a struggle. And yeah, David is a master. Ben too. Any other thoughts? All right. Wait, I'm gonna go back to my PowerPoint to kind of take you through kind of a little bit more after hearing that. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the qualities of OP. So often when we ask this question, we've asked it at our OP productions, and Ben always asks it when he speaks. We get things like, I think the dialect or the accent sounds Scottish, English, Welsh, Australian. Some people say Southern American. I've heard very like Trinidad, Tobago, people have said. And everybody's right. So, what you have to think about in this time, the city of London was really a melting pot of people from all over. And those accents came together and kind of mixed. Um, and so, if you think about all of those different parts of what we now call the United Kingdom kind of coming together and mixing together, that makes sense when you listen to OP. The other thing to consider is that, you know, this accent is like the great, 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 great grandfather accent, right? Because then those people, you know, came to America. So they went to Australia, some not by choice, right? And so then that accent is what then transformed in those locations. So it's really interesting to listen to a historical accent and think about what part of that still remains in our current accent. Another thing about it is that it's irregular. So what we know is that all those people in London were speaking different versions of this accent. They weren't speaking the exact same OP, that there were a lot of different irregularities. Just like if you think about today, if you listen to somebody, if you go down to Baltimore City and you listen to people speak, you're going to hear different variations of Baltimore accents, but you're also going to hear other kinds of accents. So that's kind of true of accents in general. Um, it's much lower in the register than a American or British accent. It's much deeper in the body. It's got a lot more resonance in it, and it's also a lot faster. So a famous story that people in the OP world talk about all the time is that the first production, remember how I told you they did it over several weeks, but they only did one weekend in OP. The weekend that they did Romeo and Juliet, the show ran 10 minutes faster than all of the other performances. There's also a funny story about the scene in Romeo and Juliet, the party scene. And the director had this choreographed dance and music that went perfectly with the lines. But when they started doing it in OP, it completely messed up the rhythm, and lines were happening faster than the choreography of the dance, and it everything got messed up because of the speed of the accent, which is kind of funny, although it probably wasn't very funny for them at the time. So how another irregularity comes from the fact that when we do this in modern times, that you know nobody knows what's right, right? We don't actually know. We don't have a recording of people from that time period and what they sounded like. So we don't 100% for sure exactly know. But OP is as close as we can come. And so some of the ways that David Crystal put together all of these sounds, there are three main artifacts that were used. So the first is kind of early modern spellings. So people really spelled things the way they sound. So this is a snip from the quarto of Sonnet 116. It's misnumbered as 119. The quarto has a lot of errors in it, and this is just one of them. Haha. But you can see these spellings are different than the spellings that we use today. Also, the type, the font is like the typeface of letters is different. So like this thing that looks like an F is actually an S. Compass, sickles. This thing that looks like a U is actually a V. It's there again. And like this is actually a U, but it looks like a V. You get kind of used to it after a while. But those early modern spellings often give us clues into the way a word actually was pronounced because it was spelled like it sounded. The second is the rhymes and the puns. So there are a lot of rhymes and puns that don't make sense in our modern accent, but actually do make sense once we put it in OP. So this is a famous example that is used all the time in Sonnet 116, and it's the couplet at the end. If this be air and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved. And we know that in a rhyming couplet, the ends rhyme, right? So Shakespeare was a master of rhyme. So why is it that the rhyming couplet at the end doesn't rhyme? Actually, when we look at it in the original accent, it does, because prove is pronounced prove. And so this couplet sounds like, if this be air and upon me proved, I ne'er writ, nor no man ever loved. And so it rhymes. Another interesting thing is, and this is one of the reasons why we as a company do OP, is when I read something in OP, I discover things that I did not see in our accent. So I'm going to read it first in my accent. And as I was doing this yesterday, I found something else that I had never seen before. And this was yesterday, okay? And like I said, I've been doing OP since 2016. So let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, although this his height be taken. Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error and upon me proved, I never writ nor no man ever loved. I discovered this thing, right? So if you take a look at the last line before the couplet, okay, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. So what he's saying here is that like love continues. It doesn't give up. It goes to the end of time, right? But listen to it in OP. But bears it out and to the edge of doom. Doom sounds like dumb, but bears it out into the edge of doom. And to me, that's interesting because I think love, when we think about like love makes you a fool, love makes you dumb, right? Like even to the edge of dumbness. I just think, again, like you're finding new things all the time. I don't know that that's what Shakespeare intended, but I find it to be really interesting. Another one of my favorites is from the prologue of Romeo and Juliet. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life. Okay, so that literally means from the fatal loins, from the reproductive systems of these two enemies, right? But when we do it in OP, from forth the fatal loins of these two foes, from forth the fatal loins, loins, and loins are the same in OP. So that's a pun. We're talking about loins, yes, for sure, but we're also talking about lines. We're talking about lineages, right? How cool. That's something we would have never seen had we not started playing around with OP. And then the last artifact is there is some writing of the time about the way language sounded. That's how we know that R was a real like fixed mark, wandering bark, right? That R sound. We know that sound from some of the writings from the time period that describe it that way. So I shared with you one of the reasons why we use it, right? The discovery of hidden meanings and jokes. That is so fun to be able to be this time traveler and to go back in time and to find these little artifacts, these little discoveries, to understand Shakespeare better. Another reason why we use it is I think it really takes, a lot of people do Shakespeare in a way that makes it very high and mighty, that makes it very precious, that makes it, for the intelligent and the smart and the upper class. And that's not really what Shakespeare is meant to be for at all. It's really was designed to be for everyone to enjoy, from royalty to the groundlings, from people who literally did not have a pot to piss in. So I think that when you hear it in this accent, suddenly these characters who you consider to be very profound just sound human And I think that's incredibly powerful for the kind of Shakespeare that we like to do at the factory. And then the final piece is the learning and discovery. Education is a big part of who we are. Tom DeLeese, our founding artistic director, was an English teacher, and this all started in an English high school classroom many, many years ago. And so that is at the heart of who we are as a company, is always wanting to learn and always wanting to discover and always wanting to explore. And so that's why, as a company, it's so important for us to continue this work and this journey in original pronunciation. So what I'd like to do now is kind of take you into some of the work that we do as a company and playing around with the accent. But before I do that, I wanted to pause and make sure there weren't any questions about what we had discussed so far, anything you might be wondering.
Any favorite discoveries in the Lear that you're working on? Any favorite puns in particular?
There were a couple, and it's funny, I can't remember them. I remember them happening, and then I can't remember what they are. I feel like I'm just about to go back to that script. Like I said, it's been a year, right? Over a year since I've looked at it. So, but I do remember every play we do, I find something.
I was going to point out the other really nice pun, if you remove the H's, if you remove the H sound in the end of the R&J prologue, which I love, is he has, the which if you with patient ears attend, what here shall miss, or toil shall strive to mend. And I love it because when you're saying it in OP, it's the which if you with patient ears, like high airs attend, what ear shall miss, our tile shall strive to mend. Our tale will strive to mend what you've heard. And I love the way that you can just twist that around and say, if you don't like it, we'll fix it. But if you do like it, it's really kind of fun with that. And that's all I had to add to that.
An example of a joke that's missed is often, I think, from As You Like It, from hour to hour we ripe and ripe, and hour to hour we rot and rot, and thereby hangs a tale.
I was going to mention that one as well.
Yeah,
perpetual favorite.
That hour and whore were pronounced the same, and ripe and rape were pronounced the same, and rape only meant fornication back then. It wasn't confined to the way we think about it today. So it was from or to or we ripe, and or to or we rot, and thereby hangs a tale. It's a bawdy joke which you miss completely in modern pronunciation.
There's a great one at the end of Antony and Cleopatra, and now I can't remember what it is, and it's going to kill me, that we discovered.
I'll read it later and see if I can find it.
Oh, I remember what it is. It's Caesar. Death shall Caesar. Death shall seize her, right? But in OP, it's death shall Caesar. Death shall Caesar.
Ooh. Foreshadowing.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, it's amazing, right? All of a sudden you're like, what did I just say? So cool. Okay, so let's get into some of these signature sounds. So our work with Paul Meyer really changed the way we look at OP, because when you were doing our work with David, he was giving us basically a recording in OP, and we were just memorizing David's recording. But what Paul did in working with him is he gave us kind of a formula for really doing the work ourselves and finding the pronunciations ourselves. And so for Paul, he kind of thinks about OP in terms of 12 what he calls signature sounds. And if you go onto his website, he'll kind of talk in depth about each of these sounds, but I'm going to go through them with you. And so when we teach actors OP, we teach them each of these sounds, and then we use some tongue twisters to help them practice the sounds when we're just starting out. So what I'd like to do with you is kind of go through the sounds and then go through the tongue twisters so that you can practice them. Okay? So the first sound is the raticity of the vowel plus the R. So that's that R sound. So can you make that sound for me? You can unmute or you can choose to do it muted. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
R.
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 R. It's that pirate R, right? So
I need to figure out how much to reduce my R's. I'm coming from the other direction. So how far in am I bringing it back to English?
R.
R. Okay.
Yes.
Sounds like yours are anyway. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm gonna do the line or the little practice tongue twister, and then we'll do it all together, and then we can do it separately or if you'd like, or we can do it all together again without me. So here's the line. Her father burned the letters in the barn on Saturday.
Her father.
Father
Her
burned
father burned the letters in the barn
on
Saturday.
Saturday.
That's a kind of sly example because it reminds you that the A sound before the R, burned, ends up sounding more like barn.
That's true.
The letters in the barn.
Her father burned the letters in the barn on Saturday.
Burned the letters in the barn on Saturday.
Burned.
Burned the
Burned.
letters in the barn on Saturday. It's the nurse sound, but we'll get to that. You want to try that again, guys? Her father
burned the letters in the barn
on Saturday.
Are you distributing the stress in the word just for a benefit for practice, or is it actually really letters rather than letters?
Her father burned the letters in the barn on Saturday. Letters in OP sounds like an American letters because that short E sound is the same.
Okay.
The only thing would be different would be that R at the end that you'd want to put a little bit more weight into. Okay, the second sound is the O sound, mouth. Ho, no, down in the mouth.
Down in the mouth.
Oh no, down in the mouth.
Oh no, down in the mouth.
Mouth, right? So it's a little bit more, that diphthong is a little bit more exaggerated in the OP. Ho, no, down in the mouth.
Oh no, down in the mouth.
Mm-hmm. The next one is this I sound, which again, I feel like Ben and David do a little bit stronger than Paul does it. It's an I. So price, chase. Annoying flies might fly noisily at night.
Annoying flies might fly noisily
at
night.
And so you can see that long I in price, but also that oi in choice becomes that I. So noisily becomes noisily at night. Noisily at night. Another thing that we'll talk about later is that word annoying. A lot of those INGs are shortened to in, just an IN. So annoying as opposed to annoying. Annoying.
I wanted to point out the first one too. I wanted to point out that slide that in front of R's, various vowels slide toward the A sound, letters, and Saturday. That persists today in the words in modern English. Words like clerk are often pronounced Clark. It still slides toward the A.
Oh no. Back.
One more. There we go.
I'm trying to make, like, I want to move my thumbnail. Okay. All right, great. Okay.
No
This
fair.
next,
We'll edit this in post.
yeah, so this next one, I think about it as like the short. I think about it in a short way. So god, ner, the square, bes, car. So
Yeah.
it's a purer sound as opposed to in an American accent. We often make them a diphthong, but in OP it's pure. So god, right? And this was a struggle for me in Othello because it's Otello. And I had to really remember to really push out my lips for that pure O sound. That it wasn't an O, which
Yeah, I had a similar problem with the O's in Hamlet, and because I would start the sound and then make the mouth shape. And until I could do the same thing at the same time, it wasn't right. So
yeah, Otello. Yeah.
okay.
So no fair where faint heart endures.
No fair where faint heart endures.
And that endures, right? Endures.
Endures.
A good thing to note here is that where sound. This is what we're going to talk about later, but that WH we often do as where in OP as opposed to where. Where. Faint heart endures. Yeah.
Where.
Where. Where.
Where.
Where, yeah. Okay, so the next sound is the one that I think is the most ridiculous. It's the when you have an I, that long, that Y at the end of a word, we often get that long I sound. Habe. It's like it's kind of accentuated and it goes up a little bit. So habe. Sile wale dalai ner habe salai.
It's a tough one.
It's a really tough one.
Sile wale dalai
ner habe salai. Sean, do you have any tricks for how you get that sound? Sile wale dalai ner habe salai.
Mentally, I make it an AY instead of a Y.
Sile wale. I don't know if that's right. Sile wale wale dalai ner habe salai. Yeah, sometimes I think of it as an long I. Sile wale dalai ner habe salai. Sometimes that helps me.
In the the David Crystal Lord's Prayer, you'll notice that um, stressed syllables, that sile, that drawn out end is on a stress syllable, but in the unstressed syllables, like thy kingdom come, they will be done. He shortens it down. It's not as I at the end of the word. He just kind of clips it off, which is probably right.
Yeah, so and that's another piece of all of this is the scansion has a lot to do. So one of the pieces of OP is there's a lot of elisions. We're going to talk about that in a second. And the way we decide if something is elided or if something is drawn out is really based on the scansion. And that's also when sounds might change because, as Tom said, if you have silly and it's that second syllable is in an unstressed position, you're not going to say silly, right? You're going to say silly, right? You're going to keep going. So that sound is going to get altered a little bit for sure. So this next one is the strut sound. Strut, strut. Much luck becomes the one who loves. Much luck becomes the one who loves. So one is an interesting word, right? So in OP, one is pronounced on. But that's not a signature sound that in any place. It's just kind of a nuance that both David and Paul agree on. So yeah, it's the on who loves.
And it survives in the word only.
Only.
Yeah.
Only. All right. So, like I told you, there's 12. So here's the, I keep doing this because I'm trying to move there we go. And actually, I want to go down here. Okay. So this is the ah sound.
And had a happy family.
Clarence married Anne and had a happy family.
Clarence married Anne and had a
happy family.
family. Happy family.
Yeah. I love that tongue twister because it reminds me that I have to smile when I do that sound. Clarence married Anne and had a happy family. That smile helps me make that sound. Sound 8 is easy for us as Americans because it's different if you're British, but for Americans, it's that short O sound, which is the same. So lot and thought, like thought. We don't say thought, but we would say thought. So it's that ah sound. I thought I'd stop at lots of nutty chocolate shops. Give it a go.
I'd stop.
I
Lots of
thought I'd stop
and lots of nutty
chocolate
shops. Typo
And so,
alert. And at and instead of at. Typo.
Wait, that blew my mind. Naughty and lots is the same to y'all?
Nutty.
Yeah.
Nutty.
Americans are weird.
So, but Liana, this is an OP thing. It's not an American thing. We don't say naughty. We say naughty.
Yeah.
Right? But in OP, that ah sound also becomes an ah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought.
Yeah.
Right? Because we don't say that. We say thought. But that ah in OP becomes that ah sound.
So both of these sounds converge to an ah.
Correct. So this is the go sound. Goose, goose. Hose, no, blow, shows. Do you view on Tuesday?
Hose, no, blow, shows.
Do
Do you
you
view on Tuesday?
So one of the things, when you're doing a tongue twister and you're focusing on a specific sound, which I find to be very helpful because it helps me isolate the sounds that I'm struggling with. But one of the things you begin to realize is like, wow, this sound really does something to my face, right? And imagine though, putting all those sounds together. It's a very chewy dialect. Your mouth has to go all the time. And I always tell my actors, like, you best be warming up your face, because if you do not warm up your face, you will not be able to do this correctly. Your mouth should hurt at the end of a speech because it is big and it is fast. So you have to, as fast as you can. And sometimes it's, one of the things I also get my actors to do is find lines in the script that are particularly challenging and then use that as their warm-up, because it is a tongue twister in OP. It's not in regular speak, but in OP it becomes a tongue twister because your mouth has to move so freaking fast to get out all those sounds. So sound 10 is ah is a bath start sound. Ah, okay. So the master started asking his art to dance.
The master started
asking his heart to dance. So this is an interesting one. It's that H at the beginning of words. So in OP, we think it's unlikely that there was that frontal H. It's probably the master started asking his art to dance, right? Getting rid of the H also helps you increase the speed. The master started asking his art to dance, right? But it also makes it harder for an audience member to understand. And so often when we did Othello, Anne really pushed to keep the H's, and I was kind of against it because I was like, I don't think so, because I think you lose the authenticity of the accent. But after listening to speeches, I actually was like, you know what, she's right. Because from an audience perspective, hearing those H's makes such a difference in understanding the words, I think. If you think about the master started asking his art to dance, as opposed to the master started asking his heart to dance. To me, it sounds so much clearer as an American listener.
It's a compromise.
It is.
You could argue that the unstressed syllable his, it makes sense to drop the H, but heart makes sense to keep it.
And I think that's something that you can think about. Then you sometimes have the problem of consistency, right? But I think that is something you can totally consider. Okay, so 11 is the Tom was talking about this one, so that sound warps a little bit. So nars, wardy, bart, barned, the darty sharts on purpose. You want to give it a go?
Burn the dirty shirts on purpose.
Wardy,
Bardy Bart barned
darty.
the dirty shards on purpose.
Wardy Bart barned the dirty shards on purpose.
Bardy Bart
Yeah.
barned the dirty shards on purpose.
Yeah, you got that. At the end, you started to get it.
There you go.
Okay, the last sound. This is my favorite one. I don't know why, but that long E becomes flare, eh. So flares. His Sam deceived by brave dreams at say. I don't know why I like that.
His time deceived by brave dreams at say.
His Sam deceived.
Lessen it a little bit, Sean. Lessen it a little bit.
His Sam deceived.
His Sam deceived by brave dreams at say.
His Sam deceived by brave dreams at say.
And I also want you to think about how lower my register is once I switch to OP, right? That's a huge part of this accent, right? So when I'm Jess, I'm here. I talk in my mask. I get a lot of crack for it. But I think one of the things I love about OP is that it reminds me to take things down because I have to, right? So his Sam to say by brave dreams that say is here. It's here, right? It's not here. It's not in Jess world. So let's talk about these additional features, and we've talked about a lot of these. We talked about elisions, right? So, and these for us as at BSF are really informed by scansion. So oftentimes words like seven, heaven, those become elided to sen, hen. The initial H dropping, we talked about those. So heaven, think about a word like hen, it becomes n once you take everything away. And that is part of what increases the speed. The medial V and voiced elision. So we talked about that. That's heaven. Elision of vowels. That ing suffix being reduced to in. We talked about that. So partian, singing, dancing, eating, starting.
But not thing and king.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
And it's added to the end of the word to make it a present progressive.
Or the gerund form.
So that aspiration of the sound. So where, hoy, what. So also, sometimes this idea of a different stress pattern in polysyllabic, I call them multisyllabic words. And this is really important because, many actors, we at Baltimore Shakespeare Factory consider ourselves to be iambic fundamentalists. And part of what we mean by that is we really believe that Shakespeare knew what he was doing. He knew how to write an iambic pentameter. So he either chose not to or he did it. Like, it doesn't make sense that he just messed up a whole bunch, right? And so a lot of actors, when you first meet with them and you do scansion, they'll be like, oh, I made this a trochee and then I think it has 3 extra syllables and da-da-da. I'm like, no. It may be the word is just not pronounced that way. Maybe the word has a slightly different pronunciation than the way we pronounce it today. And suddenly you're now speaking an iambic pentameter, right? And so I talk a lot to actors of what if you said the word this way? And then we thought about the level of stress that we give that word. So it sounds a little bit more normal for a modern audience. And then also this idea of words that have this shun suffix being exaggerated. So I was having a lot of fun saying that this was an original pronunciation presentation, right? So that's shun, right? Pronunciation, presentation, right? And that also changes scansion, right? You're adding in syllables. And so that's also a really important thing. And even now, when I'm doing a show that's not in original pronunciation, if I'm struggling with a line, often I'll do it in original pronunciation, and that'll help me figure out how to scan it.
It's a good idea.
So, you want to try it with some Shakespeare?
Oh my God.
Where are we on time?
Oh, I'm in the
time.
past.
I'll go for it.
Do
So,
it.
I'll watch it.
hold before you do it. We
Okay.
are at 8 o'clock. So, like, if people want to leave, they can. We'll do a little bit of this. I'll go 5 minutes over. But I want to say this is a King Lear preview. Actually, you know what? I'm going to close out and then I'm going to come back to this for those who want to stay on. Okay. For those who need to go, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being a part of our Baltimore Shakespeare Factory family. We really, from the start, have been a family. This company began as a company very similar to Shakespeare's. It was a group of actors who wanted to work together and who did everything to make it work. We've really grown from that. But I do think something that's remained is that feel of family, and that's really important to us. And we want everybody to feel a part of that, not just the actors and the staff. Actually, one of our audience members who comes to all of our shows sent me a baby gift when I had my baby. And I was like, Bill, I can't believe you sent Alvin a baby gift. But that is really who we are. And so that's so important to me. And I want to make sure that we continue that. So welcome to our family. We're so happy that you're here. And as we get back into the swing of things, we really need your support. So come to one of our upcoming shows. We've got our mini Midsummer Night's Dream. This is going to be at this beautiful amphitheater next to a park. September Labor Day weekend. It's only an hour, so you don't have to sit outside too long. It's shaded. It's not even grass. It's astroturf, so it's really comfortable. Not a lot of bugs in the amphitheater. And then King Lear in original pronunciation this October. Get excited. And please come and join us. And I'm Jess. If there's anything you ever need, let me know. Okay? All right. Now that I've done my ending spiel, I'll let you guys play. So this is a really amazing piece from Lear. It's Edmund the Bastard. And I had a lot of fun working this with the actor and who's doing the part. And so I thought I would let you guys play with it a little bit. It's really fun to say in OP. So does anybody want to have a go?
Let me loosen up my jaws.
I need the cheat sheet.
One of the wonderful things about the tongue twisters is that the sounds are repeated enough that your face gets used to it.
Right.
So
I'll give you a first couple lines to start off. Though nature art, my goddess, to thy law, my services are bound. Wherefore should I stand in the plague of custom and permit the curiosity of nations to deprive me?
Okay, I'll keep going.
Yeah.
For that I am some 12 or 14 moonshines, lag of a brother, why bastard, wherefore a base?
This.
When my dimensions are as well compact, my mind as generous, and my shape as true, as honest, madam's issue. Why brand they us with baseness, bastardy, base, who in the lusty stealth of nature take more composition and fierce quality. Not sure about that one. Then doth within a dull, stale, tired bed go to the creating a whole tribe of folks.
So remember, that's a really common mistake that American actors make because it feels so British to them, but it's fops. It's just fops, right? Because of that sound. And this is really, this is one of my favorite parts of OP. This line, my mind is generous and my shape is true, right? In OP, oftentimes these mois, you can elide it together. So I would do this line as my mind is generous and my shape is true, right? Like I just mid them because this speech is a dirty speech. Lack of a brother, why bastard, wherefore base? And my dimensions are as well compact. My mind is generous and my shape is true, right? It really, that OP, all those allusions really help you get to the meat. And so, I love that.
So for leg of a brother, you elided the A, and that's how you got it into the iambic.
Lag of a brother. Yeah. So I elide all that stuff. Lag of a brother. Another interesting David Crystal Paul thing is this idea of father, brother, and I slip back into it sometimes. So David says father as feather, and there's no reason for that. But for the first half of doing OP until we met Paul, we were saying feather, brother, and he was like, "Why do you keep saying feather? Like, don't you say father is feather?" And he was like, "No, it's father." And we were like, "Oh." But so, but David has to do it, so I think David's right. But this idea of, Paul's a man of consistency, and so he was really about this idea of father. But I still sometimes do it. Like I went like brother. It should just be brother.
Can I give it a read?
Sure. Yes, Tom, go for
it. Thou nature art my goddess, to thy law my services are bound. Wherefore should I stand in the plague of custom, and permit the curiosity of nations to deprive me? For that I am some 12 or 14 moonshines, lag of a brother. Why, bastard, wherefore base? When my dimensions are as well compact, my mind is generous, and my shape is true, as honest madam's issue. Why brand they us with baseness, bastardy, base? Who in the lusty stealth of nature take more composition and fierce quality than doth within a dull, stale, tired bed go to the creating a whole tribe of fops?
That was pretty damn near perfect, Tom. A couple ones.
I've been working on it for a year. I've been working on OP and acting in the spare time for a year and a half.
All right, I'm going to give you a couple things to work on.
Sure.
Fops, not fops, fops.
Mm-hmm.
Though, not thou.
Go.
Though.
Mm-hmm. Where are you? Go or though?
Thou. You said thou, nature, art my goddess to thy law. Yeah. Though nature, my goddess to thy law. And same troll. Same with true. My mind is generous and my shape is troll.
True.
But that was damn near perfect. The other thing I will tell you too is you've got to lower the register.
Yeah.
You got to find it deep. Something I do for that, which I don't know if it works or not, but Ben, when he was here, had us do a lot of physical work to get deeper. And so I just do, this is ridiculous. I do like squats as I do it, like, thou art nature, to thy law. And I just try to like get it as deep as I can.
I've been
Because
I've
otherwise it sounds all up here and a little bit Irish and a little bit of leprechaun.
I've been working on Paul Meyer's insistence on trying to get a whole lot of dynamic going on, more pitch variation, and also Tom's. I'm forever grateful to Delise for this conversational speed. And when I sped up, I was not thinking about the vowels. It just had to be muscle memory, and it works. It really helps to me anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
And
No, I mean,
I'll
what you
second
guys said is
the
beautiful.
I'll second the squats while doing lions in order to get yourself out of your head and back into your body. Um,
And, as somebody who is not, actors, we train for years and years and years and years, often like dancers, right? I've been acting and taking classes since I was 10, right? And yeah, I've learned a lot of different techniques and they layer and you find what works for you. Um, but I think that body work, like a lot of a lot of my work is in link letter, but some actors train in Alexander technique and things like that. And I think all of that body work helps you. And I'm an actor who actually struggles in my body. I'm not an actor who I'm not a body actor. I'm a voice actor. I start with sound and I move to body. And I think that for somebody like that, um, I have to always remember to get back in my body when it comes to OP. So that was super fun, you guys. I love this. I love OP. I just think it's so much fun. I think it helps you find so many things. I think it adds to the richness of the language and the intensity and the passion. And one of the things I always help actors do when they're struggling with a sound is I say, how can we match this sound to an action? Right? Because isn't that what Shakespeare told us to do, right? The word to the axiom,
The axiom to
right?
the word to the axiom.
Into the word. And so, um, what are you trying to say, and how can you use the sound to get that, right? Lag of a brother, why bastard, wherefore base? How can you use that to whip at somebody? To bitch slap them across the face. Wherefore base, right? I think there's so much power in that. Uh, so anyway, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you guys had fun. I hope you come back. I love you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jess.
You, hon.
Bye, guys.
Hey, y'all.